While our Cowboys look to exact some revenge against Baylor, my alma mater looks to do the same against Evangel. And while we're looking for an offensive identity, I just so happen to know the number one offensive coach in the United States of America.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your top stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. Got a special treat for you today. Appreciate you tuning in to be your first listen. You can find me on X at Aldeo State. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. We have a treat for you today, but we also have a treat in Mazda. You and I both know that, like our players that sweat every detail, as does Mazda, because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward moment with Mazda, where you can move and be moved. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we all know that Oklahoma State is struggling to find an identity offensively, and we also know that there was some things leading up to this previous season that had everybody excited. And it it did fall apart. It is a new age of collegiate football, so it is more difficult, in my personal opinion, than ever to keep a roster intact and keep guys motivated and disciplined enough to launch into the next season. My next guest has been able to accomplish all of that to an unprecedented level. We're talking about breaking records on top of records on top of records. Coach Terry Harrison from Friends University. How are we feeling today, sir?
Good. I appreciate you having me on. Anytime we can talk about Friends, man, we do it gladly.
Well, this is a long time coming, right? I've had a wish list of guests. You've 100% been on that wish list of guests. Seeing what you're doing at a place that I hold very near and dear to my heart, it's extremely incredible. But I got to admit, whenever you set records in 2023 and then you break your own records, not conference records, national NAIA records, I'm imagining that your name is a very hot commodity all across the country, but as you and I discussed previous last year in the playoffs, you love where you're at. You love what you're doing. You love the fact that you are at a university that realistically carries itself more like a D1, right? The facilities are absolutely insane. The campus is very Oklahoma State-esque. What draws you so much to being so tied into Friends? Because you played college quarterback at NAIA level, you played tight end, you also played JUCO level, you also coached at the high school level, you coached at Bethel, now you're at Friends. But I mean, I'm sure Sterling feels some type of way about this, brother.
No way. I tell everyone, no, Friends is a truly special place. And like you mentioned, I grew up in East Texas in a small town called Huntington. And, quite honestly, it might be the worst high school football program in the state of Texas. And so did not have a ton of success there. So went up to Sterling College and played there. And we had a really tough run. And it's just a really hard place to win and play. And so anyway, along the way, I always knew I wanted to be a football coach. And, as you go through the process, and I always wanted to coach high school football. And so I got to do that. I've been in here in Wichita since 2004. So it's the only place I've ever lived, outside of college. And so my wife and I both teach in the area. We love Wichita. My kids have went to the same schools. But, when you play, and you went to Friends, but I think everyone in the conference, when you played Friends, when I was at Sterling, you kind of looked like, man, why is that not, a nationally relevant team? No one really quite understood. And even when I coached at the high school level, we kind of asked those same questions on a Saturday when maybe they were struggling. So in the back of my mind, we always knew it was a place that could be successful, whatever that even means, at least on the national level. And then when I had the opportunity to coach, at Bethel down the road, I still lived in Wichita. I used to drive in and commute to Bethel when this job came open. It was just kind of one of those deals. I always knew if it was an opportunity, I would take it. And it's been, absolutely fantastic. And more than anything, special place, awesome leadership, and a huge talent pool of football players here in the Wichita area, which can, it can really help in recruiting.
Well, my son's got a recruiting trip down there, and he's very excited about it. We've played several tournaments in Wichita. We've played at Friends. We've played at Newman. He's seen some JUCOs. He's seen some D3s. He has some offers. And he's like, how is Friends University bigger and better than all these other places? It doesn't make sense. And you'd mentioned when you got the job or early on that Friends should be the top of the cream of the crop. It's a sleeping giant, and we just needed somebody to unlock that ability to grow. You have done that. So me tying this thing back to Oklahoma State before we get to the meat and taters of this deal. Last season, the Cowboys returned 20 returning starters, almost over 85% of the roster, after a 10-win season where we played Texas in the Big 12 title game. And, Coach, I mean, you know what happened. It was an absolute disaster. You have something very comparable. You have over 18 returning starters, over 85% of your roster last year that lost to the eventual national champion. We can get into that loss. But before we do that, what do you think that you've been able to do that clearly Oklahoma State had some struggles with this previous season, keeping everybody dialed in, engaged, accountable? What is the secret to the sauce for what you've been able to accomplish that we clearly could not quite do?
Right. Yeah. Well, I'll say first, let me preface this. I'm not an expert on Oklahoma State by any means. And really, we play our own games on Saturdays and we're working during the week. And so honestly, different levels of football, whether it be Division II, Division I, the NFL, that's kind of on the outside of my expertise or even something that I pay attention to because we're so, deeply invested in our own program. But I think like any organization, and it doesn't matter whether it's football, basketball, or even at the corporate level in the business world, it's a challenge to coach somewhere that's really struggled, right? Because you have challenges and hurdles that you have to overcome. And so we teach our kids this. Sometimes it's easier to make a jump from being 0-10 to being 9-2 than it is from being 9-2 to 11-0. And sometimes handling success is its own unique challenge. And especially when you're trying to, even if a coach has experience with it, which, obviously Coach Gundy there at Oklahoma State's been there so long and has had a ton of success.
Absolutely.
He has experience and maybe some wisdom, but you have a whole new group of young men that are in the age range of 18 to 24 or whatever that age range is. That may or may not have had experience handling that level of success and expectation. And so it's its own unique challenge. And then like any organization, when you're trying to, lead that organization and you're trying to take that organization and make that next jump, it can be extremely challenging. And who knows, like anything within families, within corporations, I'm surely there are things behind the scenes that people may not even be aware of that create hurdles and challenges that maybe we're not even privy to. But I'll tell you first that's a thing, right? And you do have to learn how to handle success. And sometimes it can be even more of a letdown when you don't have early success. And so my assumption is, certainly that probably has something to do with it because, at any level of whether that's corporation, family, or sports, it can happen. And we see that with Kansas State. It's kind of going on right now. And they're at Oklahoma State. And so there's no one that's immune to it. And there's no one that doesn't have to overcome challenges. And, on the outside looking in, I certainly understand, with it being, we make jokes around here, like that level of football is almost like, it's like wrestling, like WWE wrestling. You know what I mean? Like it's an entertainment business and it can be when you're looking at with the amounts of monies and revenue that's generated from that specific thing, there's just different challenges that I certainly am not an expert in.
Very, very fair play. And no, you're 100% right? It's not easy to build, but I do understand the concept of going from the hunter to the hunted, right? We've heard that concept ad nauseum throughout all of sports history. But yeah, right when I got there, Friends was rebuilding. They'd had a significant number of down years. And then 2005, we go 7-3. 2008, we win the KCAC. Shout out to Coach Monty Lewis. I obviously, when they were winning the KCAC title, I decided because I didn't want to do my scholastics the right way that I would go hang out in Fort Benning and have some organs removed. No big deal. And then likewise, whenever you took over in 2022, from 2014 to 2022, it was not very good, right? It was a lot of losing seasons. And then 23, you hit the ground running and you win 9 games, just missed the playoffs. This previous season, not only do you make the playoffs, but you win the first Friends playoff game. You hosted to the national title team. And let's call a spade spade. Coach, you should have won the daggone ball game. That first half, they couldn't do anything. They literally couldn't accomplish anything. You run some wild styles and do some wild things, which we're about to get to in segment 2 before an ad break. But before we get to that, you mentioned the NFL. I'll tell you one of the coolest stories from my time at Friends was there was a day that there was New York Giants and Tennessee Titans scouts there working out Isaiah Pearson and Garrett Labus, former tight end and defensive end, all-American level dudes. We also had Noah Morford come over from Kansas State. And I remember walking into the facilities and watching this take place. And in my head, I'm like, Friends University, gets NFL scouts. Like, I didn't know that. I honestly, and now you have Jeremiah Farms that's been in the NFL for a considerable amount of years. Right now, he's got almost 50 tackles in the NFL. He's got some sacks, got some tackles for loss. He's a Friends alum that is still, to this day, a New England Patriot. How often do you guys get to have him kind of come back to the campus? And B, is that something that you accentuate to your players? Like, hey, listen, it doesn't matter the level equals the talent, and the talent equals your ability to play in the NFL. Friends has had several dudes make NFL stops. Is that something that you mentioned as it pertains to Jeremiah Farms, and do you have that connection from a team perspective with him as well?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. We don't necessarily, push that. I mean, his jersey's hanging up in the hallway, and he is around quite a bit. He still comes back to Wichita all the time. So he's on campus, I'll say 10 times a year. I don't know what it is. What we really try to do, number one, we always recognize and are very thankful for him. We also try to make it a little bit of a home away from home, to where he can come here. He can be a little bit of anonymous, and whether that's worked out on the field or in the weight room, he gets the opportunity to do that. But I think our kids, certainly – I grew up, I don't know if you know, but I was going to be the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys when I was growing up. So you may not have heard that or not. It just didn't quite work out.
But I know now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it didn't quite work out that way, but that was my dream. And we tell everyone, look, man, those are great dreams, and you should dream and work your butt off to achieve all of your goals, but it's a really horrible plan, right? And so if everybody on our team can make an NFL roster, we're going to have a pretty good run on the football field, but definitely have a plan outside of that. And whether that's earn a meaningful degree, we have so many great degree programs here, learn to be a part of a team and how to function and how to handle success and handle frustration, really learning those life skills on the football field. If you can do that and then become a great husband, father, all those business leader, community leader, church leader, because of that really is the purpose of Friends University football outside of just the NFL thing. Even though, hey man, I think every, kids right now, there's some young kid out there playing catch in a yard somewhere, and they're pretending to be Patrick Mahomes or whatever that is. Right. And so we certainly want to provide those opportunities to understand, like, hey, your life is so much more meaningful than a silly, what we call a silly game of football, even though obviously we want to win football games and have some success for sure.
I mean, you say Patrick Mahomes, man, but I've got a sneaking suspicion that there's probably some local Wichita kids that are running around the backyard being Kavonte Baker. So let's talk about the fact that you're number one in the United States of America in 12 statistical categories. What is happening? Like, what is in the water that you distribute down in Wichita, Kansas, on campus? But before we do that, I do have to remind the fine folks out here that there's a lot of things in life that we're looking to accomplish. Sometimes you need to be able to get there quicker, faster, better, and also in the right kind of style. Mazda is the escape that you need. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward moment. For those who believe that it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than just put points up on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep the game moving forward. This week's moment that provides the ability to move the game forward, since we've got Coach Terry Harrison on there, we've got to talk about Kavonte Baker. Kavonte Baker is the baddest mamma jamma in all of NAIA football. If you haven't had the opportunity to get eyes on, this is a unique thing that is currently taking place right up the road from Stillwater America in Wichita. It's an easy drive. It's an easy drive, especially if you're in a Mazda. When you follow what moves you, the expected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every single highlight, there's more to every Mazda vehicle as well. Make sure that you go check out a Mazda today so you also can move and be moved by, of course, Mazda. All right, buddy. Now we get to little delay there. That was fun. Now we get to slide into this. So what you do offensively is absolutely astronomical, what you guys are able to accomplish. And this is not a misquote, ladies and gentlemen. Friends University is averaging 500 yards a game rushing, right? That is a cheat code, first of all. But you're number one in the country in points. You're number one in the country in yards. You're number one in the country, obviously, in rushing. You're like number 2 in the country in conversion rate, number 7 in the country, third down, number 5 in the country in fourth down. But you also run a crazy kind of system. What made you decide this is the offensive system that I'm going to run? Because obviously we have evidentiary proof almost 3 years in a row now that it's almost impossible to stop. Why did you settle on this form? And does Cavante Baker holler at you and say, Coach, let me rip it deep here?
Well, Cavante played for me in high school, so he gets what we do. But yeah, it's funny. You hear things about our offense, and it is honestly, and it's okay. I get it. I think it's the most misunderstood thing in all of sport, the flexbone offense. The only even comparison that I think you can make is like a knuckleball pitcher, and so it's kind of funny. Like, would you want to if I could guarantee you're going to have a knuckleball pitcher who's going to win 20 games a year, even though it's unconventional, would you still want him to be your pitcher? And the reality is there are Major League Baseball teams that don't want that. And
true. In
our sense, in the football side, it's true. The problem is there's so many myths and misconceptions out there that you hear 3 yards in a cloud and dust. But not only are we scoring 65 points a game, we lead the country in explosive plays, which are plus 15 plays for us. And so, if we were simply, the difference between a spread offense and our offense is a simple 5-yard shotgun snap. And so most people would say, hey, if we're going to score 65 points a game, they're going to say you have this great offense and, you're this explosive offense. But for whatever reason, when we score 65 points a game, we still get previewed as like, hey, they're a ball control, 3-yard in a cloud of dust team when, nothing could be further from the truth. And so to answer your question, what drew me to it? Probably a lot of things. Number one, it's my personality. We are a very physical team. We tell we don't just want to win. We want it to hurt a little bit. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so the way our offensive line plays, very, very physical brand of football. And, the reality is college football, especially as you go bigger and bigger and bigger, is built to defend spread offenses. So you have these defensive ends, and all they do all year long is pass rush, one-on-one pass rush, and all these moves. They're not preparing to play against what we do. And then,
Coach, preach it.
Yeah. And so it's some of it's a personnel deal. And the reality is college football it's a personnel acquisition business. It's about recruiting. How can you get players to fit within your system to win a football game and produce points and all that good stuff? And so for us, we can recruit elite young men that have the skills to do what we need them to do to then in turn score points, which is, football is kind of I don't know if you're aware, but it's a pretty dumb game that if you take the football across this little white line, you get points for it. And if you do that more than the other team, you win. And so we believe we can recruit at an elite level, maybe some kids that other teams aren't recruiting and be really good. And so I think there's certainly, we are unique. So that's also hard, right? Every other team we play, if you watch football on TV right now, you watch all the Oklahoma State games, and I don't watch like I said, I watch our games, but based on my understanding, everybody you're watching is really doing the same thing on offense. They all look the same. They are the same. So every week, the defense is, at least at some level, defending the same offense with little wrinkles. Whereas if you throw us into a schedule, we're a curveball, and you have to be really good at coaching. And not only do you have to coach against it differently, you have to play differently. And I think all that leads to our success. And then the last thing I'll say, I grew up a fan of the military academies, so like Navy, Army. They kind of do what we do, although I would say we have a little different style. Yeah. But what's funny is Army, with recruiting restrictions and weight limits on their offensive line, go in and beat K-State at Manhattan. What I would say is the argument is, imagine being at a school now without recruiting restrictions where you can get the best players that maybe don't have a weight restriction, O-line, all that good stuff. I've always said if you can score points with lesser players doing this, imagine when you recruit a roster with the best players. And that's what we have tried to do here at Friends. And even at the high school level, we scored a bunch of points doing this, and it's translated to college really well. So it just fits my mind. It's what I love. I have zero desire to do anything else because it's just hard to be the best at anything in the world. And so when you have this opportunity right now, we're the best at what we do. Why would we want to change?
100%. And you're right. You mentioned Army, but when people ask, what is the Friends Attack like? It's much like the service academies. It is the best representation. And every single year, whether it's Army, Navy, Air Force, they're always knocking off somebody because, as you mentioned, from a scout team perspective, it's very difficult to get your spread, high flying, fast attack to replicate what you guys do and how well you do it. It's about technique. It's about the little things. And you guys have absolutely mastered that. But on top of just, being a statistical genius to some degree, obviously, You have to have the dudes to make it happen. You talk about recruiting. You just landed a massive quarterback out of the state of Texas that had some legitimate big-time offers that I think is going to transcend what you guys are doing moving forward. But right now, you have Cavante Baker, and you also have Nick Cordova, both top 20 in the country in offensive rushing statistics. You're obviously number 1 in the country in scoring with points. But defensively, you carry a big stick, too. You got a big body beast, number 94 in Tyson Wallace, who is number 9 in the KCAC division in tackles, top 5 in tackles for loss. You got Mekhi Bird out there, got a couple sacks, got 5 TFLs. Jalen Garland, 3 sacks, 4 TFLs. Your dudes like to live in the backfield, Coach. And on the offense is wild. It's fun. But the defense, in all of my time playing, coaching, covering, I have never seen a defense that does what you guys do with your defensive line and the stand-up and being off the ball and you're blitzing from wild angles. Where did that come from? Because I don't see that anywhere else. You can offensively see a little bit of the Service Academy stuff, but what is with this defense? How did you come up with this?
Yeah, well, the funny part, like we mentioned, right? Like right now, across college football and high school football, you could Google an offensive playbook and you can run relatively decent plays. So being an offensive coordinator, while there's more to it than probably what I'm saying, you can line up and look like, yeah, this is an offense, right? And so what happens is now the game of football, people talk about RPOs, and this is not a football necessarily talking thing. But what happens is they want to line you up, and then they do the check with me, and they look over to the sideline, and the coach calls a better play, right? Yep. Well, during COVID, my defensive coordinator, who's one of my best friends, and we've been together since high school, we were like, man, I'm tired of this. Like, how come they get to line us up, and then they get to check to the best play against how we line up? And we decided, you know what, we're done with that. You're not doing that anymore. And so now – it's hard to call the best play when you don't know where they're going to be and where they're going to line up. And so that creates some challenge, and it really puts the pressure on the offensive players on the field. The pressure is not on the offensive coordinator up in the box to call a good play. Not only do they have to do that, the offensive linemen have to be able to block that, not necessarily knowing where that defensive line is going to be. And so it is definitely unconventional. It's probably one of the most common feedbacks we get. People come to watch our offense a lot because we're unique, and then they end up leaving saying, what in the world are you doing on defense? And so, I think it's a fun thing to watch. It is not normal. No. And again, it ties to what we want to be is the worst team to prepare for in a given week. We want people to hate playing us. We want people to hate having to prepare for us because we are not like anyone else. And so that's kind of by design. We don't do that. We don't do that just to be different. It is by design, and it does give us some competitive advantage. And just like we talked about on offense, when you're able to recruit to that end and bring in really good players, it just makes it even more of a nightmare. And to your point, the deal with recruiting is offensively and defensively, the way we practice, what happens is people don't understand what we do. But then when people come and visit our practice and players see us play, it is a lot of fun, and they enjoy practice. It is fun to practice. It's fun to be different. And then they kind of it's almost like blood in the water a little bit. They kind of get a feel for that, and they start to like it. And then they completely embrace the schemes we run. And that's where you have, some of the success that we've had here at Friends.
So you have a massive matchup coming up, just like my Cowboys are looking for some retribution against Baylor, who did beat us in our last Big 12. Well, no, our second to last Big 12 title appearance. You have some get back against Evangel. But before we get to that and one more ad break, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that your offense is crazy. From a naming perspective, how do you make a distinguishment between, obviously, Cavante Baker, returning KCAC Player of the Year, a guy that you've been very familiar with, but when you've got DJ Dingle back there and you've got Caden Rigsby back there, and now you've got Walker Overman, you have an embarrassment of riches, Coach. That you're coming to be the Alabama where you're just stacking and holding your roster. I see what's happening here. And then you have 11 of the top 25 KCAC rushers. What you're doing is incredible. Watching Judd and Joey and Elias. If Elias is healthy, you guys beat the national champion. Is that fair to say?
Hey, man, I think it would have been awesome to have. I would have liked to have that opportunity. I'll leave it at that. And, it's certainly humbling to hear things like Alabama. I hope we can have a run like those guys had, there at Alabama. But I would tell you, it does take, in the world of college football, it is absolute chaos. And I'm sure in what you cover right now, you're the whole transfer portal thing, it becomes cool to be it's amazing. We live in a world where it becomes cool to be disloyal, not necessarily cool to be loyal. And even more than that, it's kind of one of those deals that it can seem like we've created an environment where it's, what can you do for me? Can you promise me something? Am I going to be the starter? And if there's any friction on a team, it sure seems like in the world of college football, it's time to get up and move on. And certainly we are not at that level. We don't deal with the NIL stuff. It's just not a hurdle that we have. But what I would tell you is if in the world of chaos of college football, if you can have a program and attract young men, being very realistic with them, being very genuine in the recruiting process, and telling them, like, hey, the reality is it's hard to play here. You're going to have to be at your best every day to play here. Nothing's going to be given to you. You may have to wait 3 years for an opportunity. You may have to wait 2. I will tell you, winners choose that. So true competitors will embrace like competition positionally against other teams, and they want to play and want to compete against the best every day. And in our own world, we are certainly not in the Big 12, but in our own world and what we can control in our conference, in our division, we have absolute winners that they're having to wait their turn. And what happens is that gives us an advantage. The reality is it's just harder to play here. And we tell people in recruiting, look, if you don't want that, if you don't want the expectation of loyalty, if you don't want true competition where I cannot promise you anything other than an opportunity, then just go somewhere else, because every other school in the country might want to promise you something. That's just not going to happen here. And when that's a recruiting message and kids choose that, there's probably a competitive advantage there, because you're getting young men. You are recruiting loyalty in a world of disloyalty. You are recruiting competitors in a world of entitlement, whatever that means. And I think that's been, probably as much of anything a secret to our success, because not only are we getting really good players or the best players, we're getting the right players. And so that's kind of the thing. We are not for everyone, but we are for this perfect right kid. And when you can do that on top of, we do have great coaches and we do good stuff, but more than that, we have winners, like kids that are winners. I mean, you probably felt it when you were here. I will tell you, our kids treat people really well. There's a level of gratitude here that I just don't see other places. And that's not right or wrong. Right. That's just the life that we choose. We want to be a grateful program, because I just don't believe you can truly be tough without an element of gratitude. And I think our kids certainly have that.
Coach, how dare you be logical and practical in this wild, wacky world of college football that we all live in. All right, so let's get to some of the KCAC disrespect, man. It's very comparable to the Big 12. I don't get it. Maybe you can help me understand it, as you got Evangel right around the turn here. But before we do that, ladies and gentlemen, I do have to remind all of you out here that it's time to get your streak on Saturday delivered straight to your door. That's right. DoorDash is going to help you keep the streak alive on Saturday. Make sure that you get your order squared away there. It's almost the weekend, so it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP, who delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players deliver when it matters the most. So let's break it down. For Locked On Oklahoma State, we've given some love to Brian McCoy. We've given some love to, obviously, Josh Ford. I think it's also time to give some love to Terrell Davis. Terrell Davis, the UCO transfer coming up from a smaller level, has been able to burst on the scene. He's got the ability to take the top off of the defense. He also has the ability to settle down in the zone and get his spacing right, which makes him an absolute nightmare to cover. Without hesitation, without delay, Terrell Davis is doing some things in Stillwater that make us all exciting, just like Cavante Baker up there in Wichita, Kansas. It's not a fluke, right? When you do it week to week, these are called streaks. And just like the streak that Oklahoma State and my Falcons are putting together, you can do the same. You can deliver DoorDash straight to your house on Saturdays. And with the DoorDash Streaks, you're going to save every Saturday on your order, so you can stack it up throughout the course of the season to save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. And the promotional code ends November 18th. Get your streak started this Saturday. Ladies and gentlemen, we also got to discuss the fact that 5 Hour Energy is going to get you energized and keep you ready to rock and roll and get down the road, because caffeine is not just about what it does. You need some flavor upgrades in your life. 5 Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine, and they hold 17 flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with zero sugar and zero crashes. What you're going to love the most is how portable they are. Of course, they'll fit anywhere, they'll go anywhere, and they'll get you rocking and rolling anytime you need. Big taste in a tiny shot that you can take anywhere is precisely the boost you need in your life. You're always going to reach for your favorite flavor unless you're feeling frisky and you want to try one of the 17 amazing flavors that they have as well. You're going to be eyeing the next big flavor, so you might as well get ingratiated with the 5-hour energy shot that you need today. Enough with the boring, flavorless, normal caffeine. It's time to get your caffeine an uptick and a flavor upgrade with 5-hour energy shots. Get the favorites that you love and be bold, or try something new in the store or online at www.5hourenergy.com, or go to Amazon today. Get your energy game up with 5-hour energy. All right, Coach, before I let you skedaddle on out of here, we have some revenge factor coming up with Baylor. And, you know, sometimes when you go through this level of turmoil, it can raise the level of excitement and buy-in. So we'll see if we can't make something crazy happen. But you, too, have Evangel coming up, a top 25 team. You guys ranked number 7 in the country, but Evangel got you last year, the only regular season loss that you had, and then you lost in the playoffs to the eventual national champion. Both of those losses were by less than a touchdown. Whenever you look at Evangel, what do you think gives you potentially an advantage, and what are some of the biggest things that you need to stop? I know they got a running back that has he's top 5 in the country, so You're obviously going to be able to have to shut him down. But outside of that, why do your boys feel confident that Evangel's about to come get some?
Well, we love playing in big games. It'll be a lot of fun. I mean, the reality is probably, you know, we're just at the first 4 games of the year, we've been at a just different spot as a program, probably physically outmatched the teams that we played, but that will not be the case Saturday for sure. Evangel, they do a fantastic job. Their coach he's been there a long time, over a decade. He's been coaching in college. He's coached all over the country for over 2 decades. They just do a fantastic job as a program. And so I think it'll be a little bit of strength on strength. Their defense has really been the strength of their program, and they've just done a fantastic job, you know, over the course. They joined the KCAC now 2 years ago, and they really kind of build their program around their defense. So it is truly, you know, strength on strength, and they do a fantastic job of that. I would tell you last year, you know, we turned the ball over and they had a defensive touchdown, and you know, I think I mismanaged the fourth quarter. We ran a trick play that didn't work out, which gave them an opportunity to kick a field goal late. And, you know, it is when you look back, it's always easy to kind of, you know, shoot yourself in the foot. But I definitely did that. And I hate that when we don't give our kids, if there's a team, if they're just better than us and they beat us on a given night, you know, sometimes you tip your hat and you just go back to work and get ready for the next week. But, you know, certainly I don't necessarily know that we gave our kids their best opportunity to win last year against those guys. Right. And so we want to remedy that this Saturday. And what we know is, you know, if we don't turn the ball over, if we play really well and up to our ability, we're comfortable against anybody in the country. But I would say Evangel they've done a great job. They're on the other side of the division now, and they look to be the strongest team, at least as of today, on the other side of the division. So it is a conference championship type of feel. And we love that because you don't really know who you are when you're winning games by 70. There's some parts of that are fun, right? But you don't really get to find out who you truly are. And I know our kids. I think they'll be ready to rise to that challenge. And I'm excited to play somebody that'll, you know, kind of put up a little more of a fight, I guess.
A top 25 matchup in Wichita, Kansas. I hope that stadium is standing room only because you've earned it. You deserve it. And the machine you have rolling is extremely rare. No matter who your favorite team in the country is, no matter what level that you prefer to watch, if you enjoy college football in any capacity, you enjoy watching something that is borderline unstoppable. And, you know, as it pertains, okay, let's get to the KCAC. You just mentioned Evangel is only a couple years into this conference. Whenever you look at Friends' national ranking, at the bottom, there's like the plus and minuses. And you're green in points, green in offense, green in defense, but you're like red to orange in strength of schedule and RPI. But then here's the fun part. Whenever you go look at national statistics, I know words are hard for me, Coach. You're number 1 in the country in points, yeah? Well, number 2 in the country in points is Southwestern. Like, this is absolutely mind-blowing to me. And then on top of that, you're number 1 in the country in rushing yards, and you're number 2 in the country in yards per game. Number 2 in the country in rushing yards is Southwestern. with 2,185 compared to your 2,215. And then Evangel is right behind you guys at 1,072 yards. Evangel's also number 2 next to you in touchdowns. Why does this falsehood exist that the KCAC is the reason that you guys aren't number 2 in the country right now? Whenever you clearly see statistically that Southwestern, Evangel, and even defensively McPherson are top 5 in almost all of the statistics that you guys are number 1 or 2 in. What is happening?
Yeah, well, I think what you mentioned is exactly right. Evangel, McPherson, Southwestern right now. I mean, Kansas Western has been that way. I mean, can beat. I mean, there's not an NAIA team in the country that any one of our teams couldn't compete with on a Saturday and win and always be competitive. But, one of the hard parts of small college is it's not, it's just not as – there's not millions of followers every Saturday. There's not as big of a media presence. And so what you run into, and again, this does not represent the view of Friends University. It's more of my experience here. But, in the last 2 decades, in the last 20 years, the coaches poll has had a huge impact on rankings and playoff pairings. Well, we're all humans and we're all flawed and we're all selfish, and me included. And, the reality is in the past, if you were a KCAC team, you were gonna, even if you won conference, you were going to have to travel to a school in Montana in December and play in sub-freezing weather against the number 1 team in the country. And while those teams are good, what that created was, 15 straight years of opening round losses because no Kansas team played a home playoff game. Yep. And what we know is when you look at statistics at the NAIA level, the host team in the playoffs wins over 90% of those games. And so while we know that to be true, because of the coaching poll system and these playoff teams' coaches were all the representatives, why would you vote a Kansas team, into the top 10? And so I just simply put the cards were probably stacked against KCAC teams for the last 2 decades. Okay. And then what we see is now in the last 5 or 6 years with, Southwestern hosted and beat a perennial top 10 team last year. We were able to win a playoff game. It's just been able to the internet and social media and all that has been able to educate maybe coaches across the country that maybe, hey, we have a better brand of football than people realize. I mean, Kansas Western in 2018 did go to the semifinals and were then a touchdown away from beating Benedictine to go play a national championship game. So I would just tell you it just turns a little bit slower at our level as far as changing perception. Okay. And so that's been a thing. And then hopefully, with our competitive year last year, Southwestern played really well. We had a great playoff little situation there. And if that can change over time, it would just allow us to maybe have, some better matchups in the playoffs, because that's kind of the thing. I mean, there are teams, I think at the NAIA level, if you see, there's been more streaks of national championships than any level. So if you win 1, it's easier to win 2, easier to win 3. And you've seen runs of 2 and 3 and 4 national championships. Well, those teams have hosted playoff games all the way through December for 7 straight years. And I mean, that's just kind of a little bit of it's probably the most, the most obvious home field advantage in all of college football. And so that's okay, by the way. That is the system. What I will tell you is moving forward, the coaches poll now does not influence the playoff selection committee. And my hope is that allows for some maybe a little more appropriate matchups, I guess is probably the best way to put it, to where you are getting an opportunity to compete. And then the more you do that, the better your program gets. And then, then the reality is somebody's got to kick down the door and win a national championship out of our conference. And I sure hope that's us. But regardless, I think someone can do that in the next decade, 5, 4, 5, 10 years, whatever it is. Hopefully this year, next year in our conference, there's an opportunity for that.
Coach, come, it's 2025. This is the time. This is the season. And you have the team to do it. You should have beat Evangel last year. You just said that you did some things later in the game that maybe could have, been beneficial if you had not. I'm going to throw this out there. You can throat punch me whenever I'm down there for the Ottawa game if you like. Is there any validity to the fact that maybe the gas pedal maybe was let off a little bit in the second half against Grandview? Is that potentially fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I don't
Okay,
remember. I don't
okay.
necessarily not by design. What happened, we did have a touchdown pass called back because of an offside. So we took a shot there to go up 3 scores, and it was called back to offsides on a tackle. I'm trying to think. We had a dropped pick 6 that it kind of went out of our corner's hands, and that was just a missed opportunity on our part. And I think, more than anything, we just, for whatever reason that day we weren't quite ready to make those plays, and that's certainly unfortunate. And then when you look back, the really cool part, when we go back and watch the film, and we always want to be extremely as critical of ourselves as we are our players when you don't play well.
Right.
But the really cool part is we could take our team in the spring and watch that game back and be like, hey, it wasn't necessarily we needed different plays. It wasn't necessarily that we're going to do different defense.
Yep.
It's when you get into this moment, because when you're playing the national champion in Grandview, it's going to come down to 2 or 3 plays.
Correct.
And we just simply did not make those plays in that moment. And so it's kind of one of those deals where, you want to be critical of yourself, certainly, and you know how it is. You can't. It'd be crazy to say I wouldn't go back and do something different because we didn't come out on top. But then it's also, hey, we did play a really good team, and we just did not take advantage of opportunities. And we know, and the cool part is it's both frustrating, but then, man, it's also encouraging as well to know that, hey, man, if we are at our best, we can play with anyone in the country. And I think people might be, like a moral victory or whatever to say that we did go toe to toe with them. But at the same time, it's probably as close as anyone's truly gotten in our conference to doing it and kicking that door down. And we do want to be that team, and unapologetically, we want to be the team that does it. I don't want somebody else to do it. We want to do something that's never been done. And so I think more than anything, it gives me hope that we can do that.
All right. Lastly, Coach, before I let you go be the potential king of Wichita, in my personal opinion, whenever I say that this is a national championship level team, I firmly believe that. And I also think that it's partially because of the KCAC. Again, there is national disrespect for whatever reason, even though statistically we've got multiple teams in the top 3, top 5 in double-digit national statistical categories. But I think more so than ever, the battles against Evangel, the battles against Southwestern, McPherson, you already mentioned K-Dub. Those are going to battle test you, in my opinion, for the playoff run. And that is precisely why. When you look at this Grandview game, I'm sure it was equal parts exciting and frustrating to watch them go in a natty because, first of all, you're like, well, okay, like you mentioned, at least we lost to the national champion. But then the second part is, yeah, but we were beating them 80% of the daggone football game. So that should have been us. But you return a bunch of dudes. Clearly, the locker room is not only bought in, but they've been able to transition into this new season. Seamlessly is not even the right word to describe it. All right, so 73-14, 62-7, 62-0, 59-15. Those are the scores of your games this year. And I do have to ask a question, Coach. What happened? Why'd you let somebody put up 15 points?
Well, hey, I will tell you that is not on the defense. We had a turnover on offense and special teams. So, hey, man, I've got to own that one on the offensive side of the ball. But no, we have really good teams. And also a reminder, we were in a dogfight with Southwestern. We were in a dogfight with McPherson. We were in a dogfight with Evangel. So certainly nothing comes easy, and we are very proud of our program. But our kids understand that nothing will be easy, and especially this Saturday, it will be an absolute dogfight, and there will be our kids do not know that it's probably not going to be one of those 70-0 games. We are going to have to play our best for 4 full quarters, which as a competitor, that's what we want. I love tight football games. That's what gets me excited way more than maybe the teams that we outclass right now.
Right. Well, Evangel just dropped a pretty surprising KCAC game. And Southwestern is cruising. I'm very excited to see what you guys are rocking and rolling. I'll be watching this one on TV. I will be up there for the matchup against Ottawa. I refuse to say their initials. I can't do that, right? It's illegal to say Ottawa's university initials.
Right.
But thank you very, very much for your time, Coach. And again, thank you for doing what you're doing, because anybody who's an alum of anywhere, you're going to take a great amount of pride when your team is out there dominating and putting yourself in a position to do something that has never been done before. It's extremely special. Matter of fact, I've got a buddy up here that I just met, in the last year and a half. he's a Friends alum from the late 60s, and his last name is Stovall, right? That's kind of how we got this connection. And he was talking about what you have done at Friends University, and the fact that you've turned it into a destination place is absolutely remarkable. So I can let you know, I hear from other Friends alums that pay attention to what you guys are doing, and your backing right now is better than ever. Your team is potentially better than ever. This could be the natty run, brother, man. I can feel it in my loins. All right, sir. I greatly appreciate you, and let the fine folks out here know how they can track you down. Oh, and also, you guys play at 6:30, yeah?
6, yes.
Oklahoma State plays at 2:30. Coach, that gives you enough time to go hop on a headset, help with the run game, and then drive back up to Wichita and do what you need to do. Dude, I'm just going to throw it out there.
Yeah.
You let me know if it's practical or applicable. But anywho, Coach, greatly appreciate you. Let the fine folks out here know how they can track you down and where to watch the Evangel Valor football game.
Yeah, we have, number one, we KCACnetwork.com, our games are live streamed. We have a fantastic live stream where you're able, it gets all the sideline shots and all the different views and all that. So that's really fun to watch. You can follow our Twitter or X page, at Falcons FU. I'm at Coach Harrison FU. And then our athletic department is at Friends Falcons. And I would tell you, we have truly special players. And I think what can happen is at the bigger levels, I think sometimes there's a wall between you and the players on the field. And obviously that's what your job is, right, to kind of bridge that gap. But what's really cool here is not only can you see our players play and hopefully provide, an elite college football team for Wichita, more than that, man, you can go and see those kids after the game, step on the field, shake their hands, see the gratitude in their eyes, and really feel what our program's about. And so I would encourage anyone, if you love football, especially right now, we have great players, to come and see our kids because, it's fun. It's awfully humbling to hear people give me compliments, but I can tell you more than anything, our players are special people, and that's quite honestly the best part of our program.
100%. You guys, you have to go get eyes on. I mean, this offensive attack is obviously number one in the country in a multitude of areas for a reason. But I'm telling you, go watch this defense because what y'all do is wild, and I can only imagine what it's like to be an offensive lineman, right? Because you're used to being in the trenches and immediately getting your hands on somebody. So to have somebody coming full speed and this guy's twisting, this guy's stunting, this guy's blitzing, it's got to be a nightmare. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. It's a beautiful thing to put together. So thank you for what you're doing. I'm very excited to see how the season goes. And you know what? Consider me in like Flynn for the playoff push, brother, man.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and that's all we're going to have for this one right here. Coach Terry Harrison and the Friends Falcon look to exact some revenge against Evangel Valor. Anywho, that's all we're going to have. As always, love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked on Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Do me a favor. Hit the like button if you liked it. Dislike if you didn't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe. My podcast people out there. You're everything that makes this work. I appreciate what you do. Go do what you do. Hit the stars. Leave some reviews. All righty, y'all. Later, taters.